So I want to introduce our next artist who has a lovely show down at the far end of the gallery down the hall. And I'd like to introduce Cathie Harper. And Cathie Harper showed up a couple of years ago, I believe, and introduced herself to me with a couple of baskets under her arm, and I was duly impressed. And when you see the baskets, you'll understand how and why I was. She hails from Yellowknife and is basically self-taught as a basket maker, although she has taken some courses with some internationally known basket makers as well. She claims that there is really nothing that she can't weave. So when you see her show, you'll see various materials that she's chosen to weave with. So I'm just going to turn it over to Cathie, and she'll say a few words about her show, and then we'll take a walk down the hall and show you some of the baskets on video as well. Okay, Cathie?
Hello, I'm a basket case. At one time, people thought that came from insane asylums where they felt that the patients were making baskets and it calmed them down. Actually, it came from the First World War, when a lot of large willow baskets were used to carry men missing limbs from the battlefields. So I'm not quite that kind of a basket case. I came to Yellowknife in 1996. In the fall, everybody told me, oh, Cathie, you're going to have to join the Guild of Arts and Crafts. They've got lots of workshops. Registration is tonight at 7 o'clock, but you're going to have to get there at 6 because there's going to be a long line. So I did. There was pottery classes, there were stained glass classes, and there was a willow basket class. Well, I kind of figured that there would be a lot of expenses, so I did stained glass or pottery. I'd done a bit of basket before, and I was only going to be there for 2 years, so I picked the willow basketry. Don't ask me how much money I've spent on tools and equipment and material. I had an 800 square foot condo. I had to move to a 1,600 square foot townhouse because I either had a tidy house or I made baskets. I'm now in a 1,200 square foot house, and the only room that is not involved in making baskets to a greater or lesser degree is my bedroom. I have sacrificed my bathtub to soak willow. On the August long weekend, if I had looked at the weather forecast, I would have done my soaking of the willow outside and not in the bathtub. It was the hottest that Yellowknife had ever been, and I could not take a cool shower. I started off making willow baskets. I had an opportunity in '99 to go down to Naramata where they are having a basketry retreat, and that's where I learned a couple of techniques. I've used a little bit. One of them is working with commercial reed from Southeast Asia, which has a lot of the pieces. I then have got to know basket makers from all over Western Canada, Western United States, and elsewhere. I've taken some classes. Yesterday in my workshop, it turned out that Lynn Brown and I had both taken a class from a Swiss-German traditional willow basket maker. Accordingly, when I had taken his workshop, about 10 years after Lynn had, he had mellowed. That meant you did not have to take everything back 4 inches and redo it. But, so I come around and I just work with material. I'll see a basket, I'll pick it up and I'll look at it, sort of see like that, and, where'd that material come from? I have a tree made of copper wire in the exhibit. Stripped the wire myself. I was recovering from a hip replacement, so I had something to do to keep me out of trouble. Pretty much everything I make is my own design. I dye my own materials. I collect a lot of natural materials. I always have in the side pocket of my car a set of clippers, some flagging tape, a knife, and a green garbage bag if necessary. The one and only time I saw a dead porcupine on the road in the north, I had a good friend of mine from Toronto with me, and I did not have anything that I could go and get some porcupine needles from, and I'm still regretting that. I've taken basket courses from basket makers from England, from Switzerland, from Haida Gwaii, from a lot of West Coast Indigenous people and other West Coast artists. I go down to a basketry retreat most years in Washington State every year, along with my 91-year-old friend who taught me a lot through the years, and so I kind of replace it by being her tour guide, luggage lackey. We came back across the border one time, and I was being luggage lackey. She was in a wheelchair being pushed by a flight attendant, and I have her luggage. But I also have this big, long, about 6 feet long worth of green garbage bags, duct taped together, stuff like that. They weigh 28 pounds, because I noticed that when they checked it through. Buff willow from Somerset, England. I can't understand yet why nobody asked me what was in this container. I think it maybe was because I had the 85-year-old person with me, and he just wanted us to get through. I'm sort of going to be staying on in the Alberta for the month. Figure 1,200 kilometers from home, and why go back? I'm going to be helping said 91-year-old friend inventory all her basketry stuff, so that her family will know how to deal with it when the time comes. I'm also going to be coming back up here on the 12th, and I'm going to be staying an organic farm and doing a self-directed artist residency, because I have an exhibit, a 6-month exhibit at our local museum in Yellowknife starting next June. So I'm going to sit there and just create for 2 weeks, and then on the last week in September I'll be teaching another basket workshop here, and it's called We Wish It Was Willow. This basket is one that I designed to teach people willow techniques, but not using willow, because there's no way I would have had enough room in the car for the willow. I had no room in the car. There are 2 pieces that were going to be in the sale that, oh, I haven't got them packed yet. Oh, there's no room left in the car. They're not gone. And who knows what I might take back from ready stuff too. Enjoy everything, and please come by, and if you can, and chat about, see some of the stuff that I've made. This piece I called Will They Find It? I used a basic canvas that I painted black. I made a loom by using small nails at the top and the bottom, and then just a linen cord for my work. Used a variety of different yarns, different textures to emulate a cross section of rock. The gold wire emulates the gold ore that we found around Yellowknife. You can see I have the sky, the greenery, and the black dirt, and the wire doesn't quite all go over the top, so will they find it? This piece I called Blue Aurora. Started off with a punch bowl that I painted cobalt blue with glass paint, and then I had a whole bunch of different shades of blue in yarns, grasses, commercial reed, beads, silver wire, different cords, and just had great fun putting it all together, mixing all these textures, mainly using a weave called a packing weave, which is you go up and down rather than parallel to the basket. The rim is just a piece of interesting silver wire that I found somewhere, and I finished it off with the brooch that had been my mother's. This piece I called Leaves. It was actually over 10 years in the making. A ceramic artist friend and I had done a collaboration between clay and fiber, and this was one of the bases that we'd made that was left over at the end. And you can see it has a leaf effect, and I knew that I wanted to take a whole bunch of shades of green of commercial reed that I dyed to make a leaf-like pattern. I was packing to go up to the Great Northern Arts Festival in Nunavut a few years back and looking for projects to take with me to work on. All of a sudden I realized I had a whole bunch of different shades of green. And so I went, and where's that base? Found it, put everything together, took it up, and made it up there. It is the height that it is because this was the length of the stake material that I had to work with. So, leaves, 10 years in the making. This is a workshop I took with a basket maker friend from Michigan one time. I just love the technique of working with birch bark, different kinds, and your crazy quilt embroidery stitches. I have an exhibit coming up at the Prince of Wales Northern Heritage Centre in Yellowknife next June. And one of the things I want to be working on is experimenting with a whole bunch of different barks. This is all birch bark. Different shades of color, different spots in the tree, but still using all the crazy quilt embroidery stitches. I haven't quite finished it because I don't know what I'm going to do around the bottom. But also right now, it's useful to show how I'm doing it. I have found it quite a bit easier if I tack the birch bark to a piece of paper, do the embroidery stitches, and then tear the paper off. My next project to finish for part of the exhibit is a non-functional face mask made out of birch bark. I still need to finish the embroidery, trim it, then figure out how to attach both pieces together. I know it will never be functional. My last big piece that I'm wanting to be working on, this may be a little overboard, but I just want to, is a bustier. Using pieces of birch bark, using the crazy quilt embroidery stitches, definitely it will not really be wearable by me. This is another piece that will be part of my exhibit in Yellowknife. This is a technique that I learned from a 91-year-old basket maker friend who does phenomenal things with zippers. We had a community garage sale about 15 years ago where a friend had 2 Xerox boxes filled with zippers. I bought them all, sent them down to my friend, and she's been working with them ever since. This, I call her resilient. She's a woman who's been through a bunch of times. This is her shawl. It's made out of craft wire, netted. Knotless netting, similar to what you'd use if you're making a fishing net. The zippers are just kind of using a coiling technique, zipping them all together so that they loop together. I think there's about 50 hours in her.